Hello, welcome to American Heart Association Scientific Sessions 2018. I'm Donald Lloyd-Jones from Northwestern University here in Chicago, and I'm joined by Dr. David Goff, who's Chief of the Division of Cardiovascular Sciences at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. David, welcome.
Thank you, Don.
In an effort to try to address some of the hot topics in cardiovascular medicine these days, we thought we would sit down and have a conversation with Dr. Goff about some of the recent developments in the fields of stem cell research for patients with heart failure. Many of you may be aware that just within the last month, there have been some results of investigations performed by Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital into earlier papers published by Dr. Piero Anversa and his lab. There have been expressions of concern and, in fact, retractions of a number of articles from major medical journals related to some of the early work on stem cells that Dr. Anversa and his lab pursued. That's resulted in a pause being placed on a currently funded NIH trial called CONCERT-HF. So we thought we'd ask Dr. Goff a couple questions about what the status is with CONCERT-HF. So David, if you would, just kind of review for us, what was the premise of CONCERT-HF in its initial form?
Well, first, Don, let me thank you for having me here and providing an opportunity to talk about this study and this line of research. So the CONCERT-HF trial was designed to test whether certain cell therapies might be beneficial for patients with heart failure. And as you know, heart failure is a serious condition. Somewhere close to half the people with heart failure will die within the first 5 years of diagnosis. And so despite advances in therapy, these patients have significant limitations in quality of life and outcome. And so in CONCERT-HF, we're testing whether two different types of cells, one type called mesenchymal stem cells, which are derived from the bone marrow, and another type, c-kit cardiac cells, which are derived from heart muscle, whether these two types of cells, either given together or alone, would improve heart function and heart structure in patients with heart failure. This is really important because many of these patients end up facing the need for either heart transplantation or mechanical device support, and those are two therapies that have real serious limitations. So if this therapy actually were beneficial, it would provide an important new therapeutic alternative for these patients.
To actually try to regenerate new cardiac muscle that could improve function in the myocardium, is that right?
Well, or to help the cells that are in the heart function better. Now, it's interesting that you talk about regenerating new heart muscle. The work that you referred to that has been retracted really, from Dr. Anversa's lab, really was about this idea that these cells, these c-kit cardiac cells, would engraft in the heart, proliferate, and differentiate into new heart muscle. And when that was first reported, it created a lot of excitement. People were very excited about those results, and a lot of people started looking at this same issue. Unfortunately, people were not able to replicate those findings. And that's really what led to some of the investigations that seem to be playing out with calls for retraction, because the work was not replicated. At the same time, those investigators who were looking at this field found potentially important benefits of these cells in preclinical animal models. So it seems like these cells work in a different way. They may not, in fact, it looks like they don't engraft, differentiate, proliferate to new heart muscle, but they may provide important benefits to the heart muscle through substances they release that may activate cell-to-cell communication. We don't know exactly how these cells work, but what we know is that from really a broad base of preclinical animal models, these cells appear to provide important benefits in those settings, which is why it's important now to test in humans.
So David, what's the current status of the CONCERT-HF trial?
So the trial is currently on a pause. We have paused recruitment, tissue collection, and treatment while our Data Safety and Monitoring Board does a thorough review. When the new information came out about the retractions of these papers, from our perspective at NHLBI and NIH, participant safety and scientific integrity are really paramount to everything we do. And so when new information came out, we convened our DSMB. We asked them to take a look at the information and give us a recommendation about whether these retractions whether this raises any concerns about participant safety or about the scientific rationale for the study. And when the news first came out, we don't know exactly what the list of papers are that are going to be retracted, so the DSMB didn't have full information to act on. And so they recommended, and we accepted the recommendation, that we have a pause in the study to allow a thorough review to be conducted by the DSMB with more information. So that's where we are today. I think it's important to note we've seen no new signals of any safety concerns related to treatment in the study. And it's also important to note that the study was based on that broad body of evidence from preclinical studies showing that these cells have potential benefits in animal models, not really relying on whether the cells in graft differentiate, proliferate. That's not the scientific rationale for the study. So we're in a pause, and once the DSMB completes their review and makes a recommendation, we'll make a decision about next steps.
Terrific. I want to thank you, David, for being with us today to describe what's happening in CONCERT-HF, obviously something that's of great interest to the cardiovascular community as a whole as we wrestle with these types of problems. But I think also, particularly for our heart failure colleagues, really trying to help understand, what is the status of these potentially exciting therapies, but of course we won't know until we do very well conducted clinical trials. And I think from what I heard, that's what you're trying to make sure we're doing. So thank you again, David, and hope you're all enjoying Scientific Sessions 2018.
Well, thanks for having me, Don. I appreciate it.